The key to success on the field and in your backyard is a comprehensive game plan. So if you're building a fence or a deck this year, trust a Turkstra coach to design, quote, or order the right materials for your project. Visit a Turkstra Lumber near you to learn more.
From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker.
Week 20 of the CFL coming up. We just come home from Calgary. Ticats 6-10 and 3-1 in their last 4 games. Coach, to win the Grey Cup this year, you've got to win on the road, and you've got to win consecutive games, of course, in the postseason. And now you've done both of those things. How important is it to have set those precedents for this team?
Yeah, I mean, we knew where we were at in the situation at hand, and what we had to do. That was the bottom line, and so we had to play the next game on the schedule and wherever they were, and we since the Saskatchewan game, it's been that way, and despite records and everything, we're playing some good football teams, and then having to go to Calgary and try to remain focused and do those sorts of things. They're extremely important steps, to say the least, but you can't make it bigger than what it is, which is a game, because the game is to be played and executed at a high level to give yourself the best chance to win. Just super proud and excited that we're able to put ourselves in a position to control our own destiny.
Absolutely. The kind of an unusual game, exciting at the end, especially that last drive, of course. It seemed, for a minute there was maybe too much to do and not enough time, but for me, it was Lawrence Wood's return. And then, you kind of start going, wow, they really have a legitimate chance here. What were you thinking as you saw him sort of break midfield there?
Like, it's perfect. Like, let's go. Like, there just wasn't any wavering. And I know that's easy to say now, but you'd have to be there. And you've been on the sideline. Like, there's the biggest point there, Luke, is have we matured enough to not take a penalty in the return game right there? Because that would just be catastrophic at that point. And we've matured in that way. And so that everything goes into the other, but we are somehow able to not take a penalty. Not somehow, but that's what's required if you want to be a playoff team and do anything in the playoffs. You have to mature past those points. And we are able to do that. And when you have a dynamic returner, which I feel like every team in this league basically has one now, and he makes a play, I was very confident that we were going to get some great looks at the end zone. You never know how it's going to turn out, but I was very confident. So I was excited at that point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the maturity to not take that costly error, and still there were things that mistakes, or controllable or uncontrollable adversity that you had to overcome. Is there another level of maturity? Are there other things that you're waiting to see this team battle through?
Yeah, it's coming clutch in certain situations. Like, I feel like our short yardage game from the quarterback sneak standpoint has vastly improved, which were a hindrance early in the year. We had the unfortunate circumstance there, on the 3rd and 1.5 or whatever you want to call it, where, we made a poor decision there to bounce the ball, and we didn't get it. So you'd like, if you're going to move forward, those are situations that you're going to have to convert. I was very proud that we weren't the one taking objectionable conduct penalties in those things. That was a very good football team, extremely well coached, coming off of a bye in their house, and the challenge wasn't too big for us.
The short yardage there, we spoke after the game about that, and I mean, statistically, call it a high probability play. At least I do. Seems like you do as well. You put it in your players' hands to make that and give them that chance to keep that drive alive. And what I thought, a secondary point to that decision there was that you punt the ball, they're effectively going to be already in field goal range, maybe a play or two outside of field goal range, right when the returner catches the ball. And so liked the call, and then you get a fluky trip up or slip or whatever you want to call that in the backfield. Plays like that, where you got to make that split second decision on the sidelines as the head coach. How do you prepare? How do you stay ready for that decision, not knowing, in what way or what form or which phase of the game it's going to come in? How are you ready for those little things?
Well, I think it's just the situation that you're in, the clock, the weather, how you're playing, who's in the game. It could be, if you could flip it on defense, like let's say they were in that. Are you going cover zero? Are you playing coverage? Are you doing a mixture as a pressure zone, pressure man? What have they been successful with? In special teams, do you go for the punt block or do you play for the return? And, those are things. I don't have a exact response because every game is so different, and the gut feeling and the way it is, what's great for one week might be terrible the next. And so you just have to kind of be in tune with where you're at and just what's at hand.
How much of that is your own, call it instinct or, trust analysis in the moment, and how much of that can be prepared for beforehand? Do you have notes? I mean, for instance, your field goal kicker's range with the wind and without the wind. Surely you have that going in. How much of that can be prepared for?
Yeah, we definitely knew. In that example, we definitely knew what Seth's range was and where he's comfortable. But then, that's like pre-game wind and that. And then sometimes there's gusts. Sometimes it lets up. Sometimes it gets a little heavier. And so, I might need to knock 2 yards off of, what he said. And say, for example, if he said he was good from, the 40 as the line of scrimmage into the wind, which makes it a 47-yarder, but I really feel like it's gusting, it might become a 38 line of scrimmage starting point. Those are type of things that you have to be in tune with. There's guidelines, and then there's do what makes sense type of things. And then, same thing with punting. If you really sense they're going to pressure us, are you playing coverage or are you playing protection? I mean, you're always going to play protection and punt. So, you prepare for those, but some of it does have to be off of your gut and your instinct at the time. And then, sometimes you're afforded more time to think about it, talk about it. It might be a TV timeout, could be. And then there's times where there isn't. They're blowing that sucker in and they want to know if it's punt team or you're going for it. So it's that's the fun of the game.
What was your take on Calgary's call to last play of the game, kick in, kick out scenario? They punted the ball back with their kick return unit. Were you expecting that at all?
To be honest with you, it was something that we put in our mock game, and you would know what I'm talking about. It's something that we addressed in our meeting. And if you actually look at the tape, when you go back and look at Luke, look at Keandre, and you'll notice that he was instructed to not pass the 30-yard line. And he did exactly that, where I thought it was I like the decision by them, because if you catch a team that's not prepared and they're sprinting down and they've got 4 onside players screaming, or you catch somebody who thinks it's a punt and they're kind of circling around, it just takes one mishap and they go down in history as an unbelievable finish. Now you play a team that's prepared and it could look foolish. Keandre goes back and catches it. You'd like to see him take the quick knee, which we will from now on. But it looks like, why would you do that? But if he actually runs up, it's a foot race to get back there, and you don't know that ball's not round. And so it takes some funny hops. So I understood the decision. I think in their case, they thought, as much as you think maybe with 10 seconds you have 2 plays, you may not. You may only have one. And in one case, you think you're just trying to get a field goal in field goal range. So I understood it. I understood their why.
So is that to say you guys, in your day 4, day 3 prep, Keandre Smith, you guys got a mental rep, a half physical rep of that kickback scenario?
Absolutely. It's something that we added to it. And, it was mainly the instructions of there was actually 3 people that aren't supposed to cross the 30, spreading the field. And one did it, but one was enough in this case.
Amazing. Yeah, wow. It's funny the things that nobody else will ever know about.
That's right.
Except for listeners of the Coach O Show.
That's right. Yeah, they're in. They got the intel.
Wow, cool stuff. So some strange stats from the game. It was unusual. Time of possession, 22 minutes to the winning team. The losing team had the ball for more than 38 minutes. Net offense, 295 to the winning team, 420 to the losing team. Now the winning team was +1 in the turnover ratio, which is sort of the end all be all, the king of statistics, that turnover ratio. But what about your team that makes them able to overcome those things, like only having the ball for 22 minutes?
Well, I think part of that is we were able to get to the end zone on defense. And
yeah, huge.
The defense really kept us in the football game in the first half. I don't recall the halftime score. I think maybe 14-10 or something similar to that.
I can't remember, honestly.
Yeah, I can't either. But I know 7 of those were, attributed to the defense putting it in there. And, of course, Seth banged the long field goal. I think you attribute it to that. And then when you run the ball 31 times, the clock's going to keep going on their case. And then you add, we just didn't do a whole bunch in the first half. Now we started the second half off, and I think, as you know there, Luke, like, I just didn't feel like we could give them the ball. Logic says you take the wind in the long quarter.
Yeah.
And I just felt like we couldn't put their offense out there, and then something happened. They go down and score, and now we're behind the 8 ball. I just really felt like put the pressure on them to decide if they want the wind in the fourth. So we took the football, and then they ultimately gave us the wind. So we had the wind in the ball in the third, and we were able to capitalize. And I thought that was huge by the offense after struggling. They didn't have a lot of plays in the first half, but we didn't really also sustain any drives. And so I think for the offense to come out and score a touchdown, on that opening drive, really lifted the spirits of the football team and kind of changed the complexion.
That's really interesting. So you risk giving your opponent the wind at their back for the long quarter, the fourth quarter, to end the game. But in doing so, you have an opportunity to steal momentum immediately at the start of the second half, which you did.
100%. And, they're the best in the league at not getting off the field. And, we didn't have a bunch of 2 and outs. They didn't have a lot of points. They had a lot of yards, but we didn't have a lot of 2 and outs. And so for them to chew the clock, because you don't need to throw the ball into the wind if you're running it effectively. Mm-hmm. So for them to chew up the quarter, it's just a decision we made that we needed that football. And if we wanted to win anyway, we're going to have to score. So waiting to the fourth quarter just wasn't an option for us in this particular football game, but could be different in another game.
That's great. That's really cool. That's really interesting insight there. And your defense didn't make it 2 and out until the fourth quarter, actually, where Calgary did an unbelievable job of killing the clock when they had the opportunity. But that particular drive to start off the third quarter was a huge. That made the whole game look different at that point. Really interesting stuff. Coach, let's get into a fan question here. This one, as promised in the middle of the game broadcast this week, this is from Big Ange in Stony Creek. Fan question for Coach O. You guys can mail these into gameday@ticats.ca. We pick one every week to ask Coach O on the show. This week's question. Hi, Coach. You were a defensive back in your playing days. You've been a position coach, coordinator, and head coach. You've seen different coaching styles from different perspectives. On your team, do you give complete autonomy to your assistants in terms of play calling during the game, or do you ever override a decision on the sidelines? Big Ange from Stony Creek. Fitting to our conversation already.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if you're calling him Big Ange or if that's how they signed off, but I'll call him Ange because I don't know how big he is, so I don't want to offend him at all. So yes, I do give autonomy. I'm not a huge micromanage person. I believe in putting your input in throughout the week, kind of understanding the game plan. You see the plays that are going to be called during the week and that sort of thing. You don't know every situation that comes up. And then we're always in constant communication, Ange, as we go through the game. Are there times that I've overrid things? Yeah, absolutely. I'd say let's take a shot, or, we need to run the ball, or let's sneak it up the middle, but sometimes that happens twice in a game and sometimes not for a month of games. You empower people to do it, you oversee it, and they've watched, as odd as this sounds, they've watched way more detailed cut-ups than I have, especially trying to watch 3 phases. Now, when I was a D coordinator, obviously you're honed in, and as a DB coach, you're honed in a specifically a different way. So I can answer it directly like this, that I don't override very often. I have, but for the most part, the coordinators call the game.
Do you find that you're more, as a game goes on, are you more minded towards defensive adjustments because of your defensive background, or do you feel right in the mix with both your offensive, defense, special teams coaching?
I think it's natural for me to be a little bit more on the defensive side, even special teams to a point, whether we're going field or boundary returns. But Craig does a great job in that realm. Yeah, offensively, I'm very comfortable putting. Tommy's very good about it. Halftime, asking me what I see in that things, and I'll jot down my notes. But there's so many there's so many different people that are very knowledgeable and are seeing the game and the breakdown and the tendencies and that thing that, mine's more of a 5,000 foot overview about, every now and again I'll see a DB that's peaking, or I feel like, they may not be stopping a certain play or a certain run. But I think it's natural for me to be just a smidge more in tune to the defensive side of the ball. But I feel like I'm in tune in all 3 phases.
Cool. Ange from Stony Creek, thanks for your question, and send those questions into gameday@ticats.ca. Coach, not playoffs yet. The Ticats have not secured playoffs yet, but the last 2 weeks did a lot of good to that cause. It's like when you're a kid, you can feel Christmas coming, little changes around your school classroom, little changes around the house, and something good is close, you know it. Are there changes around the Ticats facilities that you could recognize because you're nearing the playoffs? Is it, I don't know, rewards for players, more swag in lockers, changes to practice? What changes as the year gets later?
I think it's different from week to week. I mean, we're going to go with a 2-day practice week this week. I feel like that fresher may be better for our football team at this point in time. It also gives the coaches one more day to prep, but it's also on the players to, what do you do with this day? Are you lounging? Are you walking? Are you hydrating? Or are you partying? Like, what is it that you're doing? And that's between them and them, right? At the end of the day, they only have to answer to themselves. But at this point, you like to think you have the right people, and they're going to understand what's the opportunity that we have in front of us. As far as the energy is always high after a win, and I think everybody's excited about the opportunity. And to say that you don't feel that, I'd be lying to you. You could feel that, but I feel like the energy in this building, winning always is the best deodorant. But at the same time, I feel like we've got such good people that you can't walk around here, stone faced. Even when you lose, I mean, you definitely can't be. It can't be accepted and be a way of life and think everything's going to stay the same. But at the same time, you are dealing with people, and sometimes laughter is the best medicine, and you need to lighten things up, and they're always going to follow your lead. And so how you approach it, I think every coach needs to figure out their football team that year at the time that it is. And I think you have to find that balance between business, seriousness, and not overly serious or over business like. And I know that may sound a little unique, like, they need to be whipped into shape and they need to understand what they know. Everybody understands it. And every coaching style is different. There's no right or wrong, but I think each coach, no matter your style, you have to understand your football team that year and where you're at. And you definitely need to know the pulse of everybody. And so, not a lot of changes, but some subtle changes, specifically coming full circle. We're going to go with a 2-day practice week versus just putting them out there.
Love it. The Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is presented by Turkstra Lumber. You can check out the project coaches at Turkstra Lumber. They can help with every part of your home renovation, from designing a deck to ordering a new front door. Learn more at TurkstraLumber.com. And, of course, send your fan questions in to gameday@ticats.ca. We'll have an episode every week all the way through the end of this regular season and hopefully well into the playoffs to Grey Cup week. Coach, great stuff. I really appreciate your insight, and that was one memorable football game out in Calgary, a stadium I never won a football game in, but it was great to broadcast a win for the Ticats in that stadium. Coach, best of luck with the prep for Ottawa.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke.
Another episode of the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is in the books. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Coach O and Luke are back next week to discuss the latest from the locker room. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.